Welcome to the June 27th City Council work session. I'd like to turn it over to City Manager Benda to walk us through the agenda overview.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. Look forward to today's work session. We have some really important topics that maybe we haven't had an update on in a while. Our CEO of the airport, Andrew Gala, is here. He's going to come up and kind of talk to you about certain developments in air service, northern air service, and also just what's at site. You may have caught the article. He was in News in Advance recently kind of talking about this exact issue. About a month ago, council passed a curfew. I sent you a note this last week. We take a month's data and then reflect on it in the preceding month to kind of give you impact or feedback. So we're at a month, but we need to finish June, get into July to be able to reflect on what we see. You maybe read there that at least anecdotally, Chief Zudema has shared that what they've seen is that there are less youth out after curfew. So that's anecdotal, that's a line of sight, that's windshield kind of look, but that's pretty good. And then as part of that, Dr. Holly Jennings, Gaynell Hart, and our city clerk are going to talk to you about summer youth activities that are happening here in Lynchburg, and very, very exciting. Tom is here, or will be here, to talk to you about the Mayor MWTD Thornhill statue. I don't know if you've driven down Fifth lately, but there is action afoot. The trees came down. They're moving ahead with creating the base. I sent an invitation, extended here again, July 3rd. There's a group that's going to Seaford, North Carolina, where they actually will do the pour of the statue itself. Really impactful, and there's a group, I think right now, Anna, the list is, there's a bus that's traveling. I think that there's at least 12 to 15 on the bus, and then we can also see if we can accommodate through other ways if you guys want to travel yourself. But Tom's going to talk to you about that and some of the activities that you'll see when it's installed. The projected date is August 19th, and so that's really, really exciting for our city. And then procedurally, we talked about the franchise ordinance this last time under bid. The process tonight, there's going to be a back and forth between the city clerk, city attorney, and the mayor that will then precipitate the vote later this evening about the franchise that's off Bedford Avenue. And Mr. Fees is here and participating again. There are two business item briefings for everyone's edification. I know for you understand is what staff we'd like to try to accomplish is bring you something, engage you about it, get your questions out, and then the next time you vote on a subsequent meeting so as to avoid having you read something and deal with it in the same meeting. And then there's a closed session for after the work session with that. Mayor, I turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's item number 1, the Lynchburg Air Service Development Update. Mr. Andrew Legala.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council.
Hello.
All right, we're starting off good. All right, so I just want to take a minute. Thank you, first off, for your time for the airport to go ahead and present to you our air service development program and kind of what our next steps are. So just as I get started here, what I really want to focus on just momentarily, and in respect of your times, I know we have a packed schedule, I'll keep this pretty tight. I just want to kind of talk real quick on where we were just prior to the pandemic there, and then kind of how we weathered through the pandemic and where we are now, and then kind of going forward where we're going to go and what our plan is, all in all. So as you know, the COVID pandemic was most far-reaching threat in the history of the global industry. So you remember back in 9/11, with those events, that's when we lost United Airlines. And then right about 2008, when we went through the financial crisis, is when we lost Delta. And many other airports as well has lost the same thing during those events. And then, of course, as the pandemic came, that was very hard-reaching for all airports because it lasted so long in our industry. It did change the structure of how the airline U.S. business models are, and it really aggravated the growing shortage of airline pilots. I think I've mentioned in the past, too, where during the pandemic, the airlines had early buyouts, early retirements, and many more retired out and bought out than what's the demand is right now. So it's just a major impact on commercial service airports, and particularly our small regional ones like ours, which I'll explain here shortly. So the bottom line for airlines and airports alike, the pre-pandemic, 19 established a new baseline. So everything we talk about is kind of going to be on the 19 baseline level. So With that, I'll talk a little bit, just touch on our matrix real quick. You'll see that in 19, our peak there was 165,000 passengers. That's our new benchmark when we were doing real well prior to the pandemic. And you'll see there during the pandemic, our passengers, total passengers using the airport went down to about 91,000 passengers. You can see the recovery is pretty strong. We did close last year at 148,000 passengers. So we're working real hard with the airline to make sure we keep our flights and where we're at. A lot of lines on this screen. I won't go through all of it. I just wanted to kind of really highlight the one there where we were peaking at 14,800 passengers for the month there in January. And then when the pandemic came, you could see we were all the way down to 837 passengers, which was very detrimental to us and other airports alike. You see we recovered back somewhere near the $10,000, $12,000 range. That's where 10 or 12,000 passenger range. Is it always finance? I'm not sure. So you can see that we're really trying to get back to where we were, and of course more flights will get us there. So that's just a point there. Just want to make sure I pointed out our low water mark there when the bottom fell out. And looking at our monthly scheduled seats, you can see the same resemblance there, where we had only 3,000 seats at the lowest point, and then we've slowly recovered back up. But 6,000 seats a month, 7,000 seats a month is just not where we were. And that's the big push we're talking to American to make sure we get back to where we were, which is anywhere above 10, 11, 12,000 seats. That's where we're aiming to be. Real important here is our load factors. This is what we'll talk about here in a little bit as we progress through the slides. But what's important for Lynchburg is our strong load factors. You can see there that after the pandemic, we've recovered back. And prior to the pandemic, we were somewhere near 80% on our load factors. Load factors are how many passengers sit on the airplane when they're flying out, right? How many seats are left? How many seats are being filled? So 80% passengers is real good in the airline industry, but when you're hitting 80, 90, 90% passengers, you have a not enough seat problem is what you have. You just don't have enough seats. But that's just an indication here that the community is strongly using the airport, and they continue to do so. And one thing we did hear from American on our last meeting is they're very pleased on how Lynchburg is doing so well with our load factors here. Okay, moving along to the pre-pandemic seats. The biggest thing about this slide, what I wanted to really point out was, if you look there in the middle in June, we were almost at the point where we were pre-pandemic when it came to how many seats we have. Then you could see it really pair off. And that shifted. That there, the 46% decrease is what you're seeing where, we're a regional airport, and then there's, mainline airport, main airports that have the large airplanes. And what we saw is that the airlines were plucking from the regionals because of the shortage of pilots. You go from flight school, you go right into, the regionals, and then you spend time in the regionals, and then you go to mainline. That's kind of the progression of how it works, especially in the seniority system in the airline business. But because the shortage of pilots with all the retirements and the pipeline not coming in as fast as they're needing it because of the leisure travel demand, the main airlines were actually pulling from regionals right up to mainline, and that just really disproportionately hurt us as the regional airport. And then, of course, our performance didn't match by our seat supply, which is the same discussion we keep having with the airline. So, and this is consistent nationwide, though. It's not just Lynchburg. It is nationwide. So moving along on our current air service profile, we've been concentrating on building back our American Airlines service is what I've been really pushing, and returning the service levels and the quality back to where we were pre-pandemic. We had 7 flights a day. We had 3 or 4 a day that were dual cabin, which was main, first class and main cabin. Right now, all we do have is main cabin. So our passenger traffic is back up to 85% of the pre-pandemic level, and we're about 87% on our seats. So you can see we're almost not there yet, but we're getting there. We are seeing flight frequency return to 6 daily departures. So that's a big news for us for Lynchburg. In July and looking into August, we're being told by American that we're somewhere near 6 flights a day, which is almost back to where we were, which is great news. Passenger demand remains strong, and our load factors, as I mentioned, are real high. So that's real good there. Moving along to some of our challenges, though. As I mentioned, American is still facing challenges with flights and seats. It is the pilot shortage that is the problem right now, especially amongst the regionals, as I mentioned. They do have, regional airlines have 500 or so regional aircraft still parked on the ground nationwide, of which 150 are Americans. So you can see that they're still waiting pilots to get back into the system. And they actually have 50 mainline airplanes that are still sitting on the ground. You know, you look at 2 pilots and do you put them in a 200-seat airplane or do you put them in a 50-seat airplane? Well, you know the American's going to put them in the 200 seats because there's more people on that airplane. So that's the struggle we're having when it comes to the challenges on adding additional service. All right. As we move through. Okay, sorry about that. All right, now for our, coming to where we are now, for our air service strategic plan, this here, you know, as we saw this all developing and coming out of the pandemic and where the airlines are with pilots and crews and equipment and all that, we figured that that is the best time to go ahead and update our air service strategic plan, and we did that in late fall. We did that, and one of our items that we prioritized our efforts on was a service from a major network global legacy carrier, which is American Airlines, right? And a potential new entrant, which would be an ultra low-cost carrier. The emphasis is returning American service back to where it was, and what's really important, we identified 2 targeted opportunities with American. We wanted, one, to upgauge and the greater frequency. We wanted to get back to what we had. Let's get to that first. That's what we're really trying to get back. And then what we're also trying to target is regional jet service to Chicago. Because right now we have a lot of citizens that fly out west. And they, of course, they don't want to fly south to go west. You'd rather go northwest to go west. And that was one of the discussions we did have. And I'll mention, we have 2 air service development consultants. One of them targets strategically for American Airlines only. The individual we're working with, she was the former senior planner for American Airlines for the Charlotte hub. Now she works for a consulting firm. So we quickly hired her, and she's the one that is all the horsepower to make sure that we can sell to American why we need northern service to Chicago. And she was one of the ones that was agreeing to that before she left American. But one of the discussions we had with them, and it was on their PowerPoints, and I didn't put them all in here because, you know, it would take up a lot of time. But the biggest point is going out to the western cities, so Denver, Vegas, San Diego, Houston, a lot of these are big travel destinations. We were able to strategize with American to explain to them that Chicago is a good hub to go to, because right now, anybody going west out of Lynchburg, when you get to Charlotte, those airplanes are 80 and 90% full already. So, you know, we have a full problem already, and then you get to Charlotte, and now you're at 80, 90% passenger loads already going out west out of Charlotte. So the big push was, it's 564 miles to Chicago. There's about a $55 million revenue possibility for American to use Lynchburg to Chicago for passengers going out west. And there's a whole metric on how that comes up with. But just wanted to make sure you all knew how much we pushed going to Chicago and adding additional service back to what we had before. So those are the 2 things we're targeting. Keep in mind, I've been meeting with airline headquarters for American Airlines on a regular basis, and my next meeting, of course, is going to be in August, along with other airlines as well. I'm meeting as many as I can with. Real quick on our leakage profile. Leakage is when you take the passengers that you have and they don't use your airport and they decide to use another airport for various reasons. It could be for miles on different airlines. It could be for low-cost carriers. It could be a whole bunch of things. But you'll see here, this is the new leakage data we recently received for Lynchburg, where on a 30-mile radius, if you kind of look at the radius around us, we pretty much capture about 22% of our passengers who should be using our airport, not 100%. No airport really captures 100% or near that. We do leak, you'll see 22% to Raleigh, because, you know, they've got ultra low-cost carriers, they've got a lot more seats, a lot more choices. Same struggle with other regional airports the same way. We do leak nearly 30% of our traffic to the DC area. That's why it's still important that we continue to talk to American for Dulles service. And we are generating about 206 PDUs. PDUs is passengers per day each way. That's just an acronym we use in the industry. Our true market size for Lynchburg is 954 passengers. There's about 954 people a day that fly out of our catchment area. We capture about 206 passengers, but if we go back to what I was talking about earlier, when we have 4 flights a day, 5 flights a day at 50 seats, I'm full. So they have to go to other airports, and that's the push we have with American right now, is this is why we need more seats. And then, more on diverting how passengers, when they don't use Lynchburg, 31% still use American at other airports. Some jump on B6, which is JetBlue, and then, of course, Delta 23. One of the things I wanted to mention here is if you see the fares there where we appear to be higher than the other ones. It's not necessarily that we're higher. We just have less lower price seats because they sell out faster. So that's why our fares look average higher, but truly we've been really on par with Charlottesville and Richmond, which are really low fares. Okay, now with that said, I just want to kind of roll into how we're packaging this all together. So we did apply for what they call a SCASD grant, which is a Small Community Air Service Development Program with the DOT grant. And I won't get into too much detail on this. We do apply for it each year. It was created back in 2000, and it basically provides temporary financial support incentives for small communities to get more air service. So the awards have ranged from $20,000 to $1.6 million. There's only $15 million in the whole program. So if you take $15 million and you start divvying up $20,000 and $1.6 to all 50 states and every commercial service airport, you're lucky to get one award every state if you're lucky. So we've been fortunate in 02, and we got one in 02, we got one in 06 and 11. So it's been a while since we have one, but we feel we've pitched a very strong pitch here to the DOT. So, and keep in mind, if we are awarded that $600,000 grant, I'll bring that to council for appropriation and use, similar to, that we did with the CARES grants. But basically, it's structured as a revenue guarantee to the airline. Because this airline is going to take this asset, the airplane, from another destination and bring it here to Lynchburg, and now, we have to give them a revenue guarantee. They have to make sure they're going to make money on this flight to Chicago, right? So that is very common in this grant, along with, thank you, Council, for the $400,000 air service development incentive money that you've given through 26. We're going to match those two together, should American want to go to Chicago, or should they upgauge service. So all of those, and then of course I do offer landing fee waivers and advertisement support, to the tune of about $20,000 or $30,000. But the point is, we packaged a $1 million program for American to upgauge service here at Lynchburg. So with that, this grant proposal is perfectly in line with our air service strategic plan, as I just mentioned earlier in the beginning of the presentation. I've kind of married those two together. And basically, it's prioritizing service from a major hub airline. We don't ever want to lose a major airline to a major hub. As that one bullet points out there, it's omnidirectional. And omnidirectional is very important, right? We want to get passengers from here to an airport, they can go anywhere, rather than from here to one destination to another. It's nice to add on. It'd be great to have ultra low-cost carriers. That's great. But we always want to make sure we have a global network carrier so everyone can get anywhere they want to be. And then, of course, the grant we make sure we recognize Lynchburg as a role as an important contributor to a regional economic growth, because, we are very competitive, especially to our partners next to us. So with that said, basically, the SCASD grant put together, it is for the upgauged and add frequency to expand seat capacity to pre-pandemic levels. That's the first approach. And then pursue a new destination in the form of non-stop service to Chicago. So like I mentioned, that is a revenue guarantee, and it also includes waivers. We're really hopeful that we do get the grant and really get that to American. I think that would be really, really great for us. So real quick on the minimum service requirements, and this should be it, is when we put the package together, basically we're telling American Airlines, for Charlotte service, we're wanting 6 round-trip jet daily departures 5 days a week, which is what they call most days. And it'll include 3 dual-class aircraft to accommodate 65 passengers, which is back to what we had before, which was first class and main cabin. And then operate that for a period of 1 year to be eligible for the grant. And then equipment for 2 days a week, 4 round trips, at least 50 seats for the rest of the week. And that'll be a maximum payout of about $500,000. Basically, I was going to use some of the grant and then some of other funds that we have with that. And then the Chicago service would be the same thing, some of the grant and then some of the 400,000 that we have. Now, in the Chicago service, what we're asking is 2 daily round trip with regional jets, 6 days a week. And we're gonna, they can configure that with at least 50 seats to start with, because we didn't want to approach them with dual class cabin right away to Chicago and using up more assets. Because one of the things American did tell us is, because we're only 70-something miles from Charlotte, they keep the smaller airplanes to the close-in airports, and then really the dual cabins and the larger aircraft go to 500 miles and beyond to 1,000. But we're showing a case why it's important for us to have the dual cabin and the larger aircraft. And then, of course, some fee waivers for about a year. So with that, the one thing I do want to mention is, did I lose the mouse? Where'd the mouse go?
Mouse is right here.
Oh, okay. There we go, thank you. Okay. So with that, you're okay. So as you may recall, as our city manager mentioned, we were written up in the paper a few days ago. So in closing, I just wanted to mention that, and I mentioned in the PowerPoint that our community is using the airport very well. And then one way we wanted our team to show the appreciation is we created a welcome message to all of our passengers now. So of course we upgraded the actual audio system in the terminal, and I thought maybe it'd be important that you hear at least now what our passengers are hearing as they come and using our airport.
Hi, I'm Mayor Stephanie Reed, and I would like to personally welcome you to the city of Lynchburg. If you're a resident, welcome home. If you're visiting for business, leisure, or for one of our amazing colleges and universities, we're so glad you're here. While you're out visiting our beautiful city, we hope you get the opportunity to explore and take in our city's natural beauty, historic districts, cultural destinations, and delicious food scene. Lynchburg welcomes you, and thank you for flying LYH.
Thank you. So with that, I'll close, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Farley?
Mr. Legala, thank you. I'm a very strong supporter of everything you're doing at the airport. I had a couple questions that I know we've talked about, but maybe the council would find intriguing, and an update on it would be helpful. Going back to your leakage conversation, what is the average leakage for an airport like ours, and how do we compare?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. So depending on the dynamics of where airports are located and where they're located in relation to other airports of similar size, we are sandwiched between two larger regional airports. But it's very common to be anywhere. In my experience, it's always been about, 30, 40% or under is where you pretty much capture your passengers. I mean, we're in the mid to low 20s. Because of just the amount of service we have. But anything like that is about the range, because there's other, like I mentioned earlier, there's people that they have mileage, they want miles on a certain airline, or they want that ultra low cost carrier and they just have no bags and they just want to go. I mean, there's so many different reasons why they choose other, but when you're a large airport like a Raleigh or, larger, and you have all these options, you're the one capturing everything because you have what everybody wants.
Is there a way to gauge we can capture another 5% of that and what it would take to get there?
So our problem right now is not leakage.
Right.
We don't have seats. So I can comfortably say if we got back up to our 7 flights and we got back up to our dual cabin, we would fill 300, 350 seats, no problem, like we did before. And then, again, your leakage is still going to be your leakage because those people are dedicated to go where they're going to go. But it's difficult to gauge. It is gaugeable because there is a QSI, and there's a whole bunch of ways to do that with what we're paying for to get that data. So it could be done. It could be measured. It's just very skewed.
Sure. What, I know you're probably not able to comment on this directly, but can we have a ballpark, or if you're able to speak about it, when could we be looking towards a northern connection for Lynchburg? 5 years, 3 months from now, really, is it just dependent on when the airline says we want to go with Lynchburg?
So the airlines have all the control. It's their assets, their airplanes. I wish there was a store I can go to buy an airplane, and I wish you could do that. But basically, the airline figures out where their assets are and where they put them. And right now, assets are an absolute premium. And they're the ones that, all we can do as an airport is put the best package we can forward. Now, we are competing with larger airports than us, and our incentive package are just as high as theirs, which is very good for our size airport, our size city, absolutely. But to tell you when they would do it, I couldn't tell you. Now, there's a good possibility that we would get the $600,000. We have the $400,000 thanks to City Council, that's $1 million, and American decides not to even use it. And we have that grant for 3 years. And, whenever American wants to exercise that grant, we're ready to go. But, like I said, 2 out of the 3 we had in the past, the airline never even exercised that grant. It all depends on the economics and the market and the timing of where we are in the industry.
And of course, it certainly begs the question, is there anything else we can do as a city council, and maybe also our business community? We have such a strong element of travel for business in the region, not just large corporations, but higher education. So is there anything else we can do to?
Honestly, I cannot ask council for any more than they've done already, and that's to be honest. Secondly, we have the Regional Business Alliance, we have the Economic Development Authority. They're great. We do have the Air Service Development Partnership that we have with businesses. As a matter of fact, part of this SCASD grant, I had over, I think it was 14 to 18 support letters from all of our large businesses that went with that package, along with the letter from American that said they were supportive of the grant itself. So we put that whole package together. So I've got all the large businesses involved in this with their letters on top of this grant. So I think we're hitting on all cylinders right now. We just have to wait to see if we do get the grant.
Yeah.
And just to add quickly, you probably remember, many of those businesses not simply published a letter with us, have also said if it comes to a match or further resources necessary for service, particularly north, whichever direction, that they're willing to kick that in, because that helps them as well with their business people that need to travel and don't want to go to Raleigh or go to these other places and just want to walk out their house into an airplane that's going to take them where they need to go.
Exactly, and that's my mentality. It's interesting. I agree with your assessment on the dollars to travel to another airport. It might only be $12, $15, maybe even $20 cheaper, but by the time you take into gas, time, and parking,
Exactly.
all of a sudden it's the same price.
And I strategically keep our parking lower than our competitors for that reason.
And I appreciate that. I've used it myself quite often. All to say, I'm committed to doing whatever is possible to expand this, expanding air service, especially with Liberty. I hate just going right to Liberty with this, but with Liberty looking to be in a conference, there's going to be more people coming into Lynchburg for those sporting events, which brings more businesses.
Spring break, holiday
people.
travel,
Absolutely.
all of it. We make sure we stay on American for those extra flights those months too.
Yeah, so anything that I can do,
Thank you.
I'd love to do it. And then at least a personal request, if you're looking at extra locations, St. Lucia would be great for me.
It's out west, right? You can get there from Chicago, no problem.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Very good.
Anyone else?
I just have a question. I understand Charlottesville is getting their direct flight to Chicago back. Is that true?
So they had it prior to the pandemic, and now since the airlines, are starting to get their pilots back up to speed and into the airplanes, airports are getting strategic routes that they had previously before. It's not a new destination.
Okay, so it's
They
not
had
gonna
that
affect-
already.
it's not gonna
They're
affect
just trying to
anything.
get back what they had, just like we are.
Okay, great.
Same. Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Oh,
It looks like you've had a strong recovery,
Thank you.
and that is phenomenal, and that is a credit to your leadership. So thank you.
Definitely the community, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
thank you very much, appreciate
you.
it. All right, moving on to our summer youth activities, Dr. Holly Jennings, Ms. Gaynell Hart, and Ms. Alicia Finney.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes?
Council, good evening. It's
Hello.
exciting to be here. Andrew Legala is a hard act to follow because he talks about flying places. So I'm here to talk to you guys about the Youth Summer Fun and Safety Guide. You all received it about a month ago. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about that guide so that the folks at home, people here listening, will know that it's available and will be able to access it. We started working on this right around the time we were talking about the curfew. A group of us came together from all of the departments in the city, as well as some of our partners. That included the court service unit, the sheriff's office, the Commonwealth Attorney's office, the school system. And we sat around the table and talked about what, as a city, do we have to offer to the community for children to do in the summertime that is pro-social and engaging, and some may be free, and even our programs that have a cost to them, there are scholarships available so that anyone in the city can participate in what we have to offer. We thought it might be helpful to put all of those things into one place so that it could be easily accessible by parents, so that you don't have to go searching in multiple places to find it. And so that's what you have before you tonight in that guide. I want to let folks know at home that you can find that on our website. You can see the address there on the screen. It's also been posted on the city's social media site. And for those that may not have access to internet, there are several copies of it available in our Citizens First desk here in City Hall. Or you can call any of the departments. We'll be able to provide it to you. So I just wanted to take a few moments to highlight a few things. There are 4 key areas that we covered in the guide. Those included safety, education, recreation, and places where folks can find food during the summer. And I will just take just a few moments to highlight just a few programs that kids have been involved in. And let's start with, this is just some sample pages of what parents can expect when they access the guide. You will have a food section that lists all of the places, days, and times where you can access lunch during the summer with your children. And then all of the other areas are listed kind of by either it's an educational program or it's kind of a fun program, either athletics or a dance club or a Lego club, or all of those things are sorted kind of by area so that parents can access it the easiest way possible. So here are pictures of our Water Resources Department having a camp this summer. They did this in conjunction with the Cooperative Extension Office, also known as 4-H. Plenty of you probably have fond memories of going to 4-H camp. This is not 4-H camp, but is a camp offered with 4-H through our Water Resources Department. This camp was around the concept of energy. And what you can see in these pictures here, the young lady on the bike is actually making a smoothie and powering it with the bicycle. And the folks with the buckets, they are making a solar-powered, I want to make sure I get this right, oven that you can cook in. And then everyone has done the activity with the potatoes, right? So if you haven't, I say go check out a camp because that's a super fun activity to do as a kid. Next is featured in our Lynchburg Public Library and all of the opportunities that they have provided to students and kids this summer. You can see kind of in the upper, if you guys are looking at it, left-hand corner. That's our teens participating in a no-bake challenge. I don't know if you guys have seen on the Food Network a show called Chopped. It is modeled after Chopped, and that is what they are participating in there. You can also see students participating in the summer lunch program, as well as the art and cookies program. So you get to paint and eat cookies. I'm a little jealous. I think that would be kind of fun to go to. And these are going on all summer long, and you can find a list of these activities in that guide. And then Parks and Recreation, all the fun things, right? The pool, riding our bikes, going to dance class. Again, all of those things are listed in the guide as well. So I encourage parents to access the guide, come pick up a guide, and find fun things to do with your kids this summer because there are lots of things available. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gaynell to talk about another program that's being offered, which is the Beacon of Hope. And we will take questions at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am here to talk about the Beacon of Hope program. Many of you know Beacon of Hope offers our Lynchburg City students scholarships to college after they graduate from Lynchburg City schools. This is a brand new program Beacon of Hope has started. It's a high school career exploration program, basically. Let me get to my right slide here. Basically, it's a program for rising junior and seniors of Heritage and Glass High School. Students are placed with local employers, and we are one of those employers. And we're actually in the pilot last year. This year, we have 23 companies participating in the externship and 78 students. The students actually get paid a stipend. It's a 4-week program, so they're paid to participate in this program through Beacon of Hope. And transportation is actually planned and provided by Lynchburg City Schools. So some of our local businesses, our local construction companies, local banks, and even large companies like Centra Health and Framatome have offered these internships. The program model includes 3 modules, basically job readiness. So for a week, they go to Beacon of Hope out at CVCC, and they are prepared for a job. They're taught just your basic job readiness, providing a resume, doing mock interviews, learning workplace professionalism, how to act in the workplace. So they're with Beacon of Hope for 1 week, and then they come with the employer for 3 weeks. That's the hands-on experience piece of it. And every Friday during this month period, they go back to Beacon of Hope and they reflect on what is happening at the employer and what they're learning and what they're gaining from the experience. And this is some of our kids actually looking at a set of plans. Some of the benefits to the city are recruiting people that don't necessarily want to go to college. Not every kid wants to go to college. Some people like to work with their hands. And so this is a program to try to recruit those kind of kids that maybe don't want to go to college. And so this is a good program for the city. It exposes kids to hands-on work in mechanical and technical fields here in the city. It exposes kids to public service careers. Certainly in high school and college, I never thought of a municipal service as a possible employer, so it exposes kids to that. They really learn to understand and appreciate city services and the breadth of those. It's very much like a citizen academy, and learn a lot about the city. We get to keep our local talent local here in the city, and we support Lynchburg City Schools job readiness programs. Here is some public works. These are our public works interns. We kind of put them through a public works 101 kind of situation where they get exposed to a lot of things in public works. Here they're getting exposed to basically plumbing. They're working in the fireman's fountain here, cleaning it out and getting the nozzles prepared. They actually got to go to the city or to the regional landfill and operate an Uncle Boom truck and learn how to do that. They got to operate the one-arm automated trash truck and learn how to dump trash. So they got to work with the trash collectors. They did some pruning in some of the parks. Here they're doing a culvert inspection with our engineers. And this was kind of just a culmination of last year's program where we were a pilot, and the kids really had positive things to say and still are having really positive experience this summer. So that's the public works part of the Beacon of Hope internship. And then we also have 2 young students in the fire department. These young ladies have basically said that they are looking at a career in fire service. So this gives them a firsthand look at fire service straight up. The chief said they're assigned to stations 1, 3, and 6, and also fire administration. They are actually getting to run emergency calls on the engine and the ambulance, which would be a very cool experience. And then some of the time they work in the fire administration, working with community risk reduction, fire inspections, communication, training, and data analysis. And that's kind of the end of my presentation, and I'll turn it over to Alicia Finney to talk about the Mayor's Youth Council.
Thank you so much.
Hello, good afternoon from this side of the dais. I'm here to talk about the Mayor's Youth Council. This is them in front of the mural they did last year. Very proud of them. We don't normally meet in the summer, so I don't have any summer events to talk about, but this is the time when we're gearing up, taking applications. We follow the schedule of the schools, so we'll begin our work again in the fall. So just want to talk about what we are. We are a group of 25 high school students, that's 9th through 12th grade, throughout the city of Lynchburg. So that's EC Glass, Heritage High School, LCA, VES, and New Covenant. We serve as liaison, or they serve as liaison between the youth of our community and the mayor and city council. They investigate needs, problems, and issues affecting youth of the city, What this looked like last year was we picked one issue that they were recognizing in their peers was destigmatizing youth anxiety. And so we brought in a professional and we sat down and worked a lot out. Councilmember Dolan was there, about what it looked like in their peers and themselves, how to recognize it, and some combating tools to help that. And then we launched a social media campaign and then painted the mural downtown, which is across the skate park. If you've not seen it, please go do. And then they also identify and complete community service projects for the betterment of their community. And what that looked like this year was we, in partnership with the Youth Services Board, we did a holiday gift exchange with the Lynchburg group home. So they came and wrapped a bunch of gifts, things that they needed, some fun things for them as well, and gave this to the group home. And that was a really special time. And that is in Councilmember Dolan's home. Thank you for opening it up to us. And then they also volunteered at Parkview Community Mission, the Food for Families program. We were here all day. They absolutely loved it. They did not want to take breaks. They wanted to be engaged and involved. And from this, we had a debrief afterwards, and the food insecurity theme really stuck with them. And so they wanted to, thinking about their work and wanting to, for the betterment of their community, what they decided to do was a donation-led car wash as their big community service project. So in partnership with the Lynchburg Fire Department at Station 6, we held a car wash that raised over $4,000, which I know Mayor Reed, you spoke about before. This will go straight to the Food for Families program, and we're very excited about that. This is a really great group. They loved working with Councilmember Dolan when she was with us, and they love working with Mayor Reed and continuing that. And we are just really excited to get out in the community next year and see what we can do. That's all I have, but if you have any questions for any one of us, we'd be happy to take them.
Thank you. Any questions? Dr. Weiler?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I just want to commend you and all the team and working together with our youth in our community, especially now with so much going on and so much violence and things of that nature. We need to make sure we're letting our youth know the opportunities that are here for education, for internships, for recreation, and just also give them the opportunity to give back to our community, such as the car wash and working the Parkview missions, so many great ideas. So I want to commend the city staff and all the team in working together, and also for our business partners. I mean, it shows, especially the Beacon of Hope internship program, I worked in that process of last year as well. And just to see all the 28 businesses to open up their businesses and help provide stipends and different businesses supporting that financially to make sure our kids get some work for the summer. I think that is crucial. That learning piece is even more crucial. So thank you for all of them, Beacon of Hope, and everyone working together for the children in our community. Thank you.
Anyone else? I echo that. I mean, I loved all of this. I thought it fits right into the efforts a lot of us are making to try to make sure our community is aware of things that our kids and families can do, particularly safe things the kids in our community can get involved in to keep them out of anything that's mischievous or getting targeted for crime. Safe places they can be, ways that they can get food, fun things that they can do over the summer. I'm so glad that the city is sponsoring those things. Beacon of Hope, that was awesome. I think that's crucial that our students understand that they have many options, that we're catching them, that they're getting chances. These internships, I mean, phenomenal. That's wonderful that they know that there are many avenues that they can go and that we're helping support them that way. And then same thing, the Mayor's Youth Council, those kids are awesome, and that they're getting involved again in the city, and that they're seeing a lot of things that we do, but also that they're just active in the community. So thank you for all of you and what you're doing to support it. So really appreciate it. Good job. Okay, moving on. The Mayor M.W. Thornhill statue, Mr. Tom Martin.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. It's great to be with you this evening. I'm here to give you an update on the Mayor M.W. Thornhill statue. This is a historic and very exciting project that is currently underway. And I'd like to talk with you a little bit more about it this evening. The Fifth Street Master Plan, which was adopted back in May of 2006, renderings in that plan always suggested that the Fifth Street roundabout could contain a statue of a iconic person. The Fifth Street Community Development Corporation, which is a board that really serves as advocates for the redevelopment of Fifth Street. A few of them are with us this evening. The president, Mr. Al Elliott, Nancy Marion, and Dr. Price hiding in the back. They started gathering community input for what could be in the roundabout back in May of 2009. They conducted a charrette to get input, but after much discussion and that community input, the CDC decided to work towards honoring former Mayor M.W. T.D. Thornhill with a statue in the Fifth Street roundabout. So we know that Mayor Thornhill was first elected to council in 1976. He was elected as the city's first African-American mayor in 1990. He was also the president and owner of the Community Funeral Home, which is located on Fifth Street, and served as the president of Lynchburg Voters League. Mayor Thornhill passed away on July 2nd of 2016. On December 14th, 2021, Council received a report on the recommendations of the African American Culture Committee, and this was a group that was put together to see how we could honor contributions of the African Americans have made to the city. So this report really affirmed what the CDC was trying to do in honoring Mayor Thornhill. So this statue has been really a community partnership between the city of Lynchburg, the Fifth Street CDC, but also Wiley & Wilson, a local engineering firm, and Hill Studio, which is a design firm in Roanoke. Both Wiley & Wilson donated their engineering services to this project, as well as Hill Studio donated their design services to make this project a reality. The statue is being sculpted by a well-recognized sculptor, Mr. Ed Walker, with Carolina Bronze down in Seagrove, North Carolina. The photos that you see here are the clay model in its early stages, but this is the actual model that will be used to make the molds that will cast the statue. The statue will be 1.5 lifetime, so it'll be about 9 foot in height. This is a rendering of what the finished project will look like. The perimeter of the area will be a brick wall. It'll have landscaping that slopes up to the statue pedestal, and the statue on top and the top of Mayor Thornhill's head will be about 20 feet above the grade of Fifth Street, and it will be facing towards downtown. So some very exciting dates that are coming up. The city manager, I believe, alluded to, and you were invited to go July 3rd to visit the Carolina Bronze facility in Seagrove, North Carolina, to witness the casting of the statue. That's when they'll actually be pouring the bronze to make the statue. And then on August the 19th, save the date, there will be an unveiling ceremony. Music, food, speeches, fun for everyone, on August the 19th, starting at 10 a.m. And if citizens want more information on that, they can contact our wonderful Communications and Public Engagement Department at the number listed on the screen.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
That's great. Certainly, I just said it's great. That's awesome.
Dr. Wilder?
I'm just glad to see it come to pass. I know they've worked on it for quite some time. They had some few little setbacks in that nature. So I'm glad the city take a crucial part in the investment as well. And the team worked together with all the different partners to make sure this came to pass. So thank you for all your hard leadership. T.D. Thornhill was a great leader in our community, very well respected, gave a lot to our city, the African American community, to our city council. So we definitely recognize him. So thank you to him, to his work, and also to his family for allowing us to honor him as well. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor?
Just out of curiosity, do we know the last statue the city put up?
I do not. I'd ask that same question, but I'll ask Ted
Ted Delaney.
Delaney.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the design, the way it's elevated, I think that's great. I have a little bit different perspective on things, and I've seen people drive straight through traffic circles. So I'm pretty confident, based on the design and the structure that's being built around that the statue will be protected if
Yes, sir.
somebody, and I think that's important.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. On here, on the report, it says there's no fiscal impact, but obviously it cost some money. What did it cost?
Obviously it did. City council approved the funding for it in last year's budget. It was adopted in the CIP, I believe.
If I may, Tom, legal was federal money.
With ARPA.
It was ARPA funding.
Do you have a ballpark?
It was approved at $560,000.
You know, I know you mentioned that since 2006 and then again in 2009, there was a lot of community involvement. I remember at the time that there was going to be privately raised funds, so, you know, I imagine lots of that was raised privately.
Some of it was raised privately. As Dr. Wilder referred, there were some setbacks. Some of those funds there was another sculptor involved that had health problems. When council got involved and the city got involved, that helped us move it forward. But there's both private funds involved, city funds, and the pro bono funds that are involved.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer more than, that's great. I mean, I think honoring key people in our city is something any civic institution should be involved with. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing this come to fruition. And I think the placement, I think the style, everything about it is wonderful. And I cannot wait to be there and witness it myself. With that, I was curious because it caught my attention. So 2006 is when the 5th Street plan went into effect. And it's 2023. So I know we have a lot of plans for the city and what we're doing. I think it might be prudent to say, not that the plan is bad. I loved the rendering. I wasn't here in 2006, but it's been almost 20-something years, and we're closing in on that, and that rendering is not there yet. So I know there's other plans, I know there's other visions for parts of the city. I think it would be helpful even for members of council who've been here to review some of these plans. Hey, this is what we're looking to do here. This is what we're looking to do here, and kind of recapture that. So I don't know if that's in the works with redeveloping the next big plan for this. I don't know, but that is something that just caught my attention. Might be worth it.
We talked about this a little bit in the budget process. Resources being finite, be helpful to get councils, and city staff will help with the engagement, help with the acknowledgement, help kind of walk you through, but also to get council's feedback on where to, spend the resources necessary to bring those plans to fruition.
Yeah, and I think that would really help, because if we're able to understand where those developments and changes and improvements should be, and then we as a body can collectively say, okay, that's where we really want to focus. Some of the discombobulation that may have been felt with either the CIP or the budget process might be helped because we're all understanding, hey, this is happening in 5th Street, this is happening here, this is happening in. So I say all that to say I'd like to review them. For me, I've said it before, but I'd like to reiterate it for those who are here and then also watching. I think Tyree is a gold mine. I think investing there is really the last bit of green space that could be really anything the city wants it to be. There's a housing shortage, we can put housing. There's need for industry, we can put industry. There's a lot of money, but I understand that's a big possibility. And so for me, that's just something I wanted to share. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Agreed. I think it's wonderful. I love that we're celebrating historical figures of the city, and I just was having this conversation with several people recently about really trying to highlight the history of our city again, bring it back. A lot of our history, the components of our city that we were celebrating, COVID affected a lot of the museums in the city, and I think we want to really kind of go back to celebrating some of our historical aspects, and this will be a great way to launch that and kind of bring that back to the city. So wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak with you.
Of course. Okay. Next item on our agenda is the ANCH LLC bid opening and acceptance. Ms. Finney, how many bids have been received?
This franchise agreement was advertised in the News Advance on May 26th and June 2nd, and we have received one bid as a publication, in response to that publication.
Okay, can you please read the bid?
Sure. It is from John Fees, member of ANCH LLC, I have a letter that I'll read aloud for the record. It says, "Dear Clerk of Council, please accept this letter of commitment on behalf of ANCH LLC as a bid submitted pursuant to an ordinance granting a non-exclusive limited franchise to ANCH LLC to permit the use, maintenance, and work upon encroachments in the city's public rights-of-way at 2204 Bedford Avenue, Lynchburg, Virginia, 24503. Enclosed in this letter of commitment is a $100 check payable to the clerk as required by the invitation to bid. Thank you for the consideration of ANCH LLC's bid contained in this letter of commitment. We will forward the executed acceptance of franchise page under separate cover, which they have done. I have the acceptance of the franchise agreement signed by the member, Mr. John Fees, as well, and being attested as well, and also that check for $100 that will be returned upon adoption.
Okay. Are there any additional bids being offered? From anyone? Okay. If there are no additional bids, I declare the bidding closed. Is there a motion to accept this sole bid?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passes 7-0.
Okay. A public hearing will be conducted tonight at 7:30 to hear from members of the public regarding the adoption of an ordinance granting the franchise to the successful bidder. All right, moving on to business item briefings. Vacation of easement for public right-of-way on a portion of Elm Street. This item will appear before council for action on July 11th, 2023. Ms. Eve Mergenthaler.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of council, Andy Maddox of Maine LLC is petitioning to vacate an easement for public right-of-way on a portion of Elm Street located between 1504 Elm Street, 1500, and 1520 Main Street. The purpose of the petition is to allow the installation of parking to facilitate the continued expansion of the Wayne, which is a development that consists of condo units and amenities. The area to be vacated currently contains a paved road that serves the adjoining lots. To ensure continued access, a 15-foot wide public bluff walk easement will be established on 1504 Elm Street, and a 24-foot wide public access easement will be established on 1500 Main Street. With the access easements in place, vacating the easement for public way would not impact vehicle or pedestrian traffic. The vacation will be brought before you as a public hearing item at the July 11th meeting.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? No? Okay. Thank you very much. All right, next, organizational meeting and rules of procedure. This item will appear before council for action on July 11th, 2023. Ms. Alicia Finney and Mr. Matthew Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. State code, as well as City Council's rules of procedure, prescribe that the first meeting in July will be your organizational meeting. So this is just a bid before that meeting. The purpose of the organizational meeting is to prescribe by resolution to schedule a meeting dates, times, and places for the upcoming year. That, of course, has followed the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, except for the months of July, August, and December, when we only meet the second Tuesday. 4 o'clock here in council chamber. Something that we're trying different this year is instead of a 7:30 start time, we're proposing a 7 p.m. start time, as well as moving the 2 meetings in the month of March to the second floor training room just for the 4 o'clock. There is if we move a regular meeting, which we have been doing for budget season, there is a notice that we have to put in the paper, and this will just save us that money and putting it in our rules of procedure. So that is really all I have here for the schedule of events, but I will turn it over to Mr. Friedman, who will talk on some other changes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of City Council. As you'll see from your agenda packet and some information I'd communicated earlier, you have 2 options of proposed revisions to City Council's rules of procedure. So they are substantively the same with the exception of the portions concerning the public hearing. What I'd like to do, if it pleases council, is try to go through each of these one by one to see where council stands as a majority on each of the proposed amendments, given that they're fairly different from one another. And I'll use option A, and at the appropriate time, I'll jump back and forth between option B and option A for the public hearing section. So under section 2.1, where it talks about the scheduling of City Council's meetings, You'll see there's an offset paragraph that says the second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 4 p.m., except there will be no regular meeting on the fourth Tuesdays during the months of July, August, and December. And there's proposed additional language that is on both A and B that says, however, during the month of March, the work session portion of the council's regular meetings will be held in the training room of the second floor of the City Hall, 900 Church Street, Lynchburg, Virginia, 24504. Is that something a majority of City Council would like to see in there?
Second floor? No.
We just wait a vote by consensus?
I think he's looking just for feedback.
Well, it's just for feedback. I guess if certainly I want everyone to give their input so I can hear it, but if I'm looking for direction from at least 4 as to where you all want to go with it.
So just for the March meetings, having the work sessions at the second floor training room?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
I'm not in favor of that.
Is this in connection with the budget, would be during the budget season? Yeah, and we think.
Presumably, yes, ma'am.
Most of us felt that it was much.
But those are different though than it's in here. I mean, these aren't, I mean, you have separate meetings. Those aren't, the budget meetings aren't regularly scheduled meetings.
So,
I mean,
Typically they are.
I mean, what we typically will have them there, but I just, you know, I've watched how it was difficult to get up there. I've watched how there was doors that still weren't open, especially when we have our regular work session. For budget meetings, you know, we can have them there, but that wouldn't change the rules of procedure because those are separate budget meetings. So you have the separate budget meetings as opposed to our normally regularly scheduled work session. You got the cameras, you got all the ability for citizens to come in. You don't have to figure out how you can get up to the second floor when the elevator's locked. I mean, there were reporters that couldn't make it. I couldn't make it. I got stuck 2 times. So this is a great place. If there's a separate work session, that's the budget meetings, those would be scheduled at that time to be there. I don't think we need to do it in our rules of procedure.
Question, you did make reference that it would save us money for.
That's correct, right. That's correct. Every time we move those meetings, historically, we've, at least for the last 2 years, we've moved those 2 March meetings, even though they are work sessions, we do majority budget, we move to the second floor training room. It's about $1,000 to do that, to move it, to publicize.
Okay. Is there anybody that else would like to speak in opposition of making the change?
Yeah, I don't think we should make the change at all. I mean, frankly, I don't even think we should have any meetings up there, because anything that we do that limits access to the public for witnessing the operations of government and the way that we deliberate is not an advantage for the public. You know, we have a small number of people in here in this room right now, and this small number of people would be extremely uncomfortable up in that conference room. And this is kind of the average number of folks that we see that show up for one of these work sessions. And I feel like this is a much more comfortable place for our citizens to sit and engage and witness the operations of government. And I'm not in favor of moving any of those meetings up there and promoting the greatest access we can to witness the operations of government.
Oh, is anybody else opposed to moving it? Dr. Wilder?
I'm not opposed. I was going to hear from the staff. What is your preference as far as for the budget sessions and holding the work room upstairs?
The city clerk, the biggest component here is because of our rules. Here we go. Sorry. Councilman Hegelson's exactly right, or at least my posture has been, as it relates to the budget process, is to get around the table in a work session and kind of roll up our sleeves. And I felt it's been at least a reasonably good posture the past 2 years. I agree with you about access and whatever the kerfluffles were. I hope that we've since kind of cleared those up and people are able. I will offer all the same technology, all the same sound, all the same ability that we have in this room is also in the second floor room. So any concerns about lack of access from the standpoint of it being streamed or videoed or acknowledged, all the same capabilities that's in here are up there. So from my perspective, it's trying to get the body to work together in a fashion that's a round of table. Maybe it reflects on what I think is a roll up your sleeves kind of work session-y kind of thing. So that's my promotion for it. And then it was Ms. Finney who kind of acknowledged that because of our rules, that we don't have maybe the flexibility that I've experienced in the past, and that for her, when we change the location, because what you're setting, and it took me a minute to clue in, is that this goes through calendar years. So current things as they are go through till the end of this calendar year 2023. This is projecting out for 2024. And so when she made that mention, I think in trying to be good stewards of the public purse and thinking ahead a little bit, considering the last 2 years I've at least proposed being around a table, I thought it was a good opportunity to save a little dough. So Dr. Wilder, it's my recommendation and how we posture ourselves during the budget process, but certainly if the body wants to be in here as opposed to there, okay.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep.
I do have one question. Is there anywhere else that could provide this, the same type of format where there is greater access, greater parking, and all of those things that would be advantageous? And when does this decision need to be made by, I guess, is the other question.
So
July 11th would be
July
when
11th.
we're adopting the rules of procedure.
I could certainly put forward some other, because just thinking about parking, or that question about it, parking's going to be the same, considering it's council chambers is the same city hall building. So if you're asking for an off-site location that's publicly held or owned, I can certainly look into something like that.
I mean, I don't know what the other options would be, but it's just something that, I mean, the
Yeah.
IT conference room.
Massive and just reopened.
There's a ton of room in that IT building.
Sure, sure.
There's a ton of parking there.
Some very strange curtains atop I don't know what they, so I was just there, so I'm just reflecting on what it
I was
looked
there
like.
Thursday.
Yeah, so no, I mean, that's another opportunity, just by way of going back to ease and/or frequency. If what we've known as the public is that you do your business here, thinking about another location, I don't want to put too many flies into the ointment, if you will.
We have at least 4 that are in favor of having it in the second floor training room, because I think that's what Mr. Friedman asked for. If we have at least 4, you're in favor, I'm in favor.
I'm favorable to it.
Councilman Taylor, you're in favor?
Yeah, 5.
Okay. Then I think we can move on.
All right.
What was the next question?
So the next section, where there's proposed modifications, is under section 3.4, preservation of order, subsection D. So what it says currently is, while a meeting of the council is in session, all council members will treat one another with respect, courtesy, and exhibit appropriate decorum. Additional language that's proposed is, council members shall not insult, demean, or belittle one another or city staff while a meeting of the council is in session.
Do I have anyone who's opposed to that change? Vice Mayor?
I appreciate the heart with this, and yet, I think it should be included, and yet, there needs to be the ability for someone to act foolish and let the public hold them accountable, not just us saying, you can't act this way in here because we say so. And that's kind of my take on it. It's like, I agree that this activity should not happen in here. However, people have a right to be stupid, I guess.
And
So that's what I would say.
Okay. Councilman Shins?
kind of speaking a little bit to what the Vice Mayor said, also, it's the subjectivity of this. You know, right now, for the next 18 months, we'll have a Mayor Stephanie Reed. We may never have another Mayor Stephanie Reed in 18 months. It could be somebody new. And those different people could interpret this differently because it's a very subjective interpretation on what those things may be. So if it's not something that we have a concrete ability to define, I don't think it belongs in our rules of procedure.
Read the first paragraph, or the first, or not the first paragraph, the first sentence. Respect, courtesy, and decorum. That's what's always happened. So I don't think it's adding words that, one, I don't think changes, plus it's lots of different things. So I think we should leave most of our rules of procedure. I think we should leave them all the same, other than maybe removing, I think there's an issue in here with regarding emails. You know, that's, as I mentioned a few meetings ago, I think maybe that was apropos during COVID, when people were not wanting to show up. But now we've had the litany of emails being read and phone calls.
We're getting
That's
to that
another
one.
Yeah,
subject.
so
that one.
I think that's about the only one I'd like to see changed on all these, so.
Is anyone else opposed to the change, proposed change?
So I think you're putting it in a negative, I mean, quite frankly. Is anybody opposed to this change as opposed to what we have now is here are our rules of procedure? There should be a proactive, if anything is going to be changed, that should be incumbent upon the person that is initiating or desiring change, as opposed to just even the way you're framing it, is saying, oh, well, if you're against it, then you're against the change. Well, I mean, it should be the reason of why somebody wants to make the change. So I think,
Vice Mayor.
Fair point. My recommendation was to the mayor to just say, hey, if you're favorable to it, speak. If you're not favorable to it, speak, and then figure out where we are. So that was just my effort to help in putting us to a point, if you will.
Thank you for everyone directing me. I got it. I was talking to Councilman Mitchins. Councilman Dolan?
Yeah, thank you. I think I actually like it. I think it adds a little more specific to how our behavior should be, since we don't really always adhere to the same behavior that we actually require the public to adhere to when they are speaking or they are in council's chambers. And I think that we need to be more specific so people understand what this really means by respect, courtesy, and appropriate decorum.
Yes, I do think that part is needed because it's been it has been a different process lately. And I think from citizens, when I go out, when I'm in public, I hear so much concern about city council and the actions and how it's perceived to others. So I think we need to have some kind of a standard in place that persons can see there's a standard in place that how we should act. Thank you.
Councilman Taylor?
I'm good. I think we ought to love one another.
So
That's
do
it.
you want to keep it as it is, or do you support the proposed change that Mr. Friedman just read?
I support Mr. Freeman.
I also support the proposed change. Thank you.
So the next proposed change is under Section 4 of the agenda. And this is under Section 4-1, Preparation, subsection B. Currently, it reads, any council member may request that items be placed on the agenda by contacting the clerk of council at least 7 days prior to the meeting for which the council member wishes the item scheduled. The clerk of council shall place requested items on the agenda for the next regular meeting following the request. The new proposed language would continue after that and say, unless directed otherwise by a majority of the council, such items requested to be placed on the agenda shall first appear before the council during the council's work session for discussion.
So I've got a question about that one in particular. How are we going to decide? Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, may I speak? May I speak?
You may.
Thank you, ma'am. I've got a question about that, is how are we going to decide who the majority to determine that? Because we can't vote by email. So if we don't have a meeting between the time that an agenda request is submitted, there's no way to get to that majority. So I don't see that not only is this an unnecessary change, it's not even practical to be able to carry it out because we can't vote via email. We have to vote in these chambers in a public meeting. It would be an illegal vote.
Yeah.
So the rules of procedure are actually in complete contradiction with the Code of Virginia. So it can't be in there.
So with that said, and certainly the section can be modified. This is a proposal, okay? So With that said, it sounds like the proposal would be, if it's going to be considered, that the first portion of that sentence, unless directed otherwise by a majority of the council, would be stricken, and it would just start with such items requested to be placed on the agenda shall first appear before the council during the council's work session for discussion. Is there appetite to have that in there in lieu of the proposed sentence?
Vice Mayor Feraldi?
I'm favorable to it. I think it clarifies where our requests go and puts it into a streamlined process. So for me, it makes sense. It makes no bones about it as to where things we want to go over, either individually or as a body, where they go, and then slates them for moving forward. I think it clarifies it. And yeah, I'm favorable to that.
Is there anyone else in favor of that change? Dr. Wilder?
Yeah, I'm in favor because at some point it's becoming a little, you don't know what to expect anymore. So I think at least if we can discuss as a body, it kind of brings some more calmness, more understanding of what we're proposing for our citizens. Thank you.
Anyone else in favor? Councilman Nolan, yes?
So I guess one thing.
Anyone else in favor of it?
I guess just,
Councilman Helgeson?
you know, the one thing to consider, one, obviously, we just recognize the illegality of it, but secondly, if we now look and say the next meeting, so sometimes the next meeting was a work session that was canceled. So the next meeting may not be a work session. So I think you have the 7 days. We've had work sessions that have been canceled previously. We've had Finance Committee that was canceled today. You have other committees and things that have been canceled. So it should be, you know, I don't know how it changes much because it's the next meeting, which most likely would be the work session, but it would be the next meeting.
Councilman Mischins?
Could we add something to that that would kind of speak to what Councilmember Helgeson stated, that if the next meeting did not include a work session, that it would still get slated for the agenda?
I certainly suppose you could. If there was no work session, you could add language to that effect if council wanted to do that. You know, I don't know of a particular instance where we may have a meeting where we wouldn't have a work session, but it does not hurt to include that language in there if council is at the pleasure of also including something to the effect of that.
And I just don't think that it would behoove us to position things that could potentially stifle the representation of the public. Because as elected officials, we hear from the public about the issues that they want to see come forward on the city council agenda. And if there was language that would essentially prohibit something that maybe we need to act on quickly or we need to bring forward quickly, I would, 7 days is plenty. Oftentimes, we don't get the agenda packet for the meeting until Thursday night, the night before. So 7 days is plenty.
Vice Mayor Feraldi?
I think it's important to realize that if it's a work session, that's where we're working through proposals, topics, ideas, just like we're doing right now. I know folks watching right now are probably being like, are they really going over their own rules of procedure? But it's actually, I think it's required by state code. Like, we actually have to do this. So this is a really important thing. So forgive me if this is just nails in your eyeballs. For me, work session, we're working through something, we're hashing out ideas, putting it to a T, putting it to a point, to then put at a 7:30 meeting for an up or down vote and debate one way or the other. So structuring it through a work session is important, not just because I want to expedite this and put it on the agenda, but more or less that it affords not only city council, but city staff, the public, to really watch us get into the weeds. So for me, keeping it at the work session makes a lot of sense. Also, I don't know of maybe 2 work sessions that have been canceled since I've been on council. So I mean, like, I'm comfortable with this. I really am.
So the council members that are comfortable with the proposed language, which is, can you repeat it, please?
Yes, ma'am. With the language stricken previously discussed, the new language would be, such items requested to be placed on the agenda shall first appear before the council during the council's work session for discussion.
Okay, so Dr. Wilder, Councilwoman Dolan, Vice Mayor, Councilman Taylor, you're supportive of it? I'm supportive of it as well.
All right. There were two inconsequential changes made to the sections 4-2 and 4-3 to correct some typos in there. The next section for council's review and discussion is section 5, order of business for council meetings. There are some proposed revisions under number 2, council work session, where some additional language was included in parentheses to conclude at 6 p.m. An additional, blocking or dots tried to outline what would be in the council work session, that is staff reports, business item briefings, roll call, and closed meeting if necessary. There was an additional change under number 4 to change the call to order from 7:30 to 7 p.m. And those are the substance of the changes on section 5.1.
You want to speak? Vice Mayor Feraldi?
I'm favorable.
Okay. Any other people in favor, council members in favor of those changes?
For all those changes, or just the, so 7 o'clock, 7:30 is, I think, is what we've done historically. So
5-1-1.
so I think 7:30 is
5-1.
still.
Dr. Wilder, did you? You're fine with that, Councilwoman Dolan?
Could I just ask a question? What's driving the 7 o'clock? Is that?
I can speak to that.
Thank you.
Want to get out of here a little bit earlier?
So that means I really have to hustle home to let my dogs.
No, in full transparency, I think a couple things. One, just given where we've been with some of the, I'll say public hearing, technically, the emails that have been read, which we're going to address in a later part of this document, but also voicemails. With more opportunity for citizens to engage, it takes up significant time. And if every voicemail that will still be played, which is the recommendation further in this document, 10 voicemails, 3 minutes apiece, that's 30 minutes. So I meant it in jest, but truly it is to help us move through the business a little bit faster and conclude at a better hour.
You're okay with all the suggested changes? Anyone else in favor of all the suggested changes? Or okay with them?
I'm good.
Councilman Taylor? Anyone opposed?
I don't like the 7:30. If we finish at 6, what you're having, historically, you have a work session. If you want work sessions to be different, that means you're having a work session, rolling up your sleeves, you go home, you change, you do whatever, you come back for the 7:30. There's typically a little bit of time to let your dog out, to go eat, and be ready for the evening. If we're not going to have the reading of voicemails and emails and all that, the normal 7:30 would still apply and would be done without those, 30 minutes of reading emails.
Councilman Mistress?
I'm favorable to keeping it at 7:30.
I'm comfortable with all the proposed changes.
All right. So the next proposed change is the addition of a new section 5-1.1 called Council Work Session. It includes a subsection A and a subsection B, which I'll now read as follows. The council work session shall be the designated time where city staff may introduce and present various matters affecting the city, its citizens, and/or the municipal corporation to the council for review, discussion, questions, guidance, and consideration for a vote at a later date. The council and city staff are encouraged to engage in discussion, ask questions, and the like during the council work session. B, absent exigent circumstances as determined by a majority of the council, no items will be positioned for a vote during the council work session.
Vice Mayor Feraldi?
So where this one comes from was that work sessions weren't actually defined. Hopefully this helps us in the understanding of what a work session is, where we're going to vote, not going to vote, and how things are stacked up for consideration at a business meeting. And so I am favorable of this.
Anyone else in favor of this? Dr. Wilder?
I'm favorable, because this, I think I just don't remember in past in voting during a work session. So I always appreciate the advance notice, and then you can really review the items for the evening sessions. So I'm in favor of this as well. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in favor of this? Councilman Dolan?
Tightens it up, I like it.
Okay, anyone else in favor of this change? Councilman Taylor?
Yes, I'm in favor of it. Just keep it moving.
Okay, Councilman Richards?
I'm just a little curious how that would work, because today we would have been in violation of the rules of procedure because we voted on the franchise. So, you know, why would we be doing something to kind of hamstring us? I mean, in addition to that, the council work session shall be designated a time where city staff may introduce and present various matters. Well, city staff aren't the elected officials, we are. So we should also be able to introduce and present various matters, not just the staff. So, you know, I just think that I understand what the attempt is here. You know, do we need to be able to define a work session in the rules of procedure? Probably we need to be able to do that. I just think that the language that's being proposed is pretty far from where it needs to be.
Vice Mayor Feraldi?
My recommendation would then be to have it read something to the effect of, Mr. City Attorney, where items may be introduced and presented, and I'm sure you can imagine where I'm going with that. Just remove city staff where items can be presented and so on, and, you know, take the definite, the who out of it to a degree. And then what was the other concern, Councilmember Missions?
We voted on it.
By my no, I would actually keep B, and by my imagination, what we would do is we would have voted prior to the public hearing, if possible, on that, and then conducted the public hearing, closed it, and then voted to adopt whatever. So that's how we would have gotten through it.
So we need to vote to amend our rules of procedure, or suspend the rules of procedure.
No. If this was in our rules of procedure, we would have voted on the item we did tonight, then immediately conducted the public hearing, and then move forward accordingly. Instead of voting at the 4 o'clock, we would have voted at the 7:30 and then rolled right into the public hearing. Yeah, they could. If I may, Madam Mayor, why wouldn't they be able to show up?
Well, I mean, if somebody was watching the work session to see how that vote was determined, to determine whether or not they would show up to the public hearing, you know, they may not show up. You know, they were planning on watching for like today, if somebody was watching to see the result of that vote before they showed up tonight, the result of that vote may have determined whether or not they showed up tonight.
And
So,
Madam Mayor?
I would say it's a fair point, except if it's a 7 o'clock meeting, it's towards the bottom of the agenda. You can get there at 7:30. There's still the ability to show up and witness and be a part of. And then if they don't vote on it, okay, then I can go home.
Mr. Freeman?
Madam Mayor, a simple solution would be is if there's a concern as to when individuals could show up or not show up as a result of a vote, council could simply spread out the meetings as to when it was considered. So for example, they could simply do the acceptance or rejection of the bid at a different meeting date, and then at a following meeting date do the public hearing. So I don't, especially as these aren't as prominent, they're fairly few and far between as often as we consider the franchises. I don't know if I would let that deter you all if there's a majority here from wanting to do something like this.
Okay, so the revised suggested proposed change is now, can you reread it, please?
Yes, I'll probably work on the language, but the substance would be essentially the same, except where it says where city staff, it would say where items may be presented, introduced, discussed, just generically, so it would be clear that staff and council members would have the opportunity to do that.
Okay, so we have the Vice Mayor in support, Dr. Wilder, Councilwoman Dolan. I'm supportive, Councilman Taylor is supportive of that proposed change.
All right. The next section is...
I didn't speak to that.
Councilman Helgeson?
Also the voting, B, I think we should strike B. I mean, because if you're voting on a majority to say, let's vote. Typically, I mean, historically, since 2004, there have been lots of votes in work session. I know maybe the last year or two, some folks that have been new may not have seen votes. Have been votes when council decides to vote. I mean, that's, you know, we're the elected people, the elected representatives of the citizens, and if we're going to vote on an issue, whether it be at 5 o'clock or whether it be at 7:30, I don't see that being an issue, because the vote can actually be to table something, or the vote can be to deny it or can bring it up. I mean, having the ability to vote, or specifically hamstringing the, you know, to me, this document now was the council rules of procedure. Now it seems like it's vastly different on lots of these items. So I think it should be council's rules of procedure. This is changing a lot of dramatically, and I don't like this. If there is a time to vote, if people want to vote on something, great, vote on it, be done with it, be expeditious with regarding city business.
Madam Mayor, I would ask Councilmember Helgeson to make a offering as to what items he would want to be exempt from Section B.
Well, Section B, we just had one just a minute ago with regarding the franchise ordinance for Mr. Fees. We've had other things where now if we're going to take something, for example, if we're going to, like we used to do, here's what we used to do. We used to have a public hearing on like a major issue. That major issue was then a public hearing. Council didn't take action right then because the citizens gave lots of input. Once the citizens gave lots of input, we tabled that from a public hearing, brought it to a work session. Like, for example, tonight, if we have an item that is, we're going to say, hey, let's talk about this, not tonight, let's not vote on the issue tonight, let's take it to work session. Well, you're taking it to work session, where then you vote on it. I mean, we have done that repeatedly. I mean, every big development in Lynchburg, I think we first had a public hearing, then it went to a work session. I mean, Bert Dodson, about every meeting, when we had a big issue, said, hey, let's, rather than being in the purview of the public right at the time or the heat of the moment, we just heard from citizens, let's go back and answer some of those questions, let's think about them, and then let's vote on it during work session.
So the franchise agreement, is there any other items you would want to exempt from this clause?
So what do you mean exempt? So what this is saying, basically, we're not going to vote in work session.
Except certain things. I'm asking what you think those certain things should be. Because I'll admit, example, there was a public hearing about a tax rate. Said tax rate is then motioned for left and right. There's debates, there's back and forth, and then it's moved to a work session. Not a week later, after council members say, you know, hey, let me think about it, and then, oh, by the way, I'm just going to move forward with it anyway. So to me, what I'm trying to do is say, if there's going to be votes, if there's going to be action, it's at the evening meeting, because that's the one most people can get to.
And just keep in mind that last meeting on the tax rate, when we did after the public hearing, we made a motion to actually adopt the tax rate at 89 cents. What did we hear? What did we hear from the city attorney? What did we hear? That was an illegal vote at the night meeting. And so anyway, I think there's lots of things that we can vote on it now, or we can decide to vote on things later. It's just historically, there's good times, you know, like that vote. If we wanted to say, let's table the tax rate vote until a later date, fine. That's the will of council. If we want to actually, like, for example, last week we had a meeting on the Centra Health. That was a big proposal. That big proposal should have been taken to a work session, in my opinion, where we actually went through all the things, but everybody's ready to vote on it that night, and that's fine. But a normal work session, you'd kind of walk through the different things. Rezoning, like when we rezoned Walmart and the Target area. Those were big public hearings that we then took to work session. Windhurst was the exact same thing, the whole traditional neighborhood development. Cornerstone traditional neighborhood development. We had a public hearing. Lots of people spoke up for and against. We then took it to a work session where we actually kind of hammered out some of those issues, and then we voted on it after. So I think there's lots of things that we could do to vote, so I don't know how I would just exempt, but there could be many things with regarding zoning, conditional use permits, tax rates, some of those things, I guess, to answer your, I think would be good.
Here's my point. So the tax rate I was actually talking about wasn't this latest one, it was 2 years ago, where there was a motion by a former council member to move it to a work session. That was the prevailing motion. And that was a week after the public hearing where this room was full. I mean, 100 people, 80-something people spoke, 60 people spoke, a lot of people spoke, whatever the number was. And right at the next work session, that's where the $1.11 was adopted. Now, I was on the opposition of that, but the situation is you have all these folks who come out to watch you act on something, and then it's kicked to a work session, which is at 4 o'clock, which I would hope most people are still working or trying to make a buck. And now that's when we adopt it. So in the spirit of transparency, both from the public observing and council members being, I'll just say it, I don't want to be putting other council members in gotcha moments just because I have the opportunity to, and we've witnessed that this year. I don't think it's the most productive way to engage our business. So if there are things that do need to be carved into this, I'm willing to work with you on that and get those in there. But I also want to make sure that when we're saying we're going to be acting on something that's been vetted and considered, it's at the 7 o'clock meeting. I believe that's the most prudent thing to do. So,
And I think that can still happen by striking B and really recognizing that, hey, we're not going to, exclude any votes, just like today and just like other times, because those are, so I get what you're saying, that the goal should be most votes are at the 7:30 meeting. Okay, great. How can we state that rather than saying you can't vote? Maybe there's a way to kind of change that language.
I have a proposal then that we can consider at our next meeting to hopefully get us to the next one, unless Councilmember Missions really wants to offer something.
I do want to add to this.
My recommendation would be not a majority, a simple majority, not a simple majority, 2/3 vote. If you want to adopt something at a work session, it requires a 2/3 vote. If not, it gets slated for a 7 o'clock meeting. That's my proposal. Because otherwise, Councilmember Hoganson, what I'm hearing is, I want the latitude to be able to motion where I want to and vote where I want to, and I respect that. But if we're trying to make sure everything is vetted, has been considered, and every council member and the public has had the opportunity to review something, those votes should be slated after we've reviewed them. And so to give that ability and possibility of still adopting something at a work session, 2/3 vote, that'd be my recommendation.
But if I can add on to that before
Can I let Councilman Missions speak,
if I can add on to his before we get off of that same topic. Okay. So just the one thing with that, because, and I get that, the 2/3 vote may be good, a supermajority. The reality is that there may be some folks that say, hey, I'm voting in opposition, but I'm ready for it to end. So I will vote to vote and vote for it to end. So it doesn't have to be, a supermajority of those passing, but those that are ready to let's say, yeah, let's vote on the item. And so, and I think it goes back to just one of our previous items, to be respectful. If there's an issue that, like, for example, there's an item tonight, if somebody doesn't want to vote on it tonight, well, fine, that's great, we'll talk about it, and then we'll bring it to a work session and vote on it then. That's kind of out of decorum and respect, as opposed to, because of subsection 5-2, subsection 6, you can't do something, or for then someone to say a vote was illegal. So that's what I don't want to see again.
Councilman Missions.
And I think that the Vice Mayor brought up some good points. You asked specifically what you would like to see on there as exclusions. I think the franchise agreements would be one of those things that should be included. And I think that anything involving the budget development process should be also. Because when we go through the budget development process, there is a debate, and we are in a work session. And we are basically moving things back and forth, pieces of the puzzle. We're gonna take this package, we're not gonna do that package, we're gonna take this, we're gonna do that. And we're going to need to get to a decision before we get to the meeting on what's actually going to be proposed. That's what we actually did during the budget development process this year. Quite frankly, I would like to see more input from City Council on the brass tacks of the budget and actually being able to get more finite next year in where our citizens' money is being spent, because that is the single greatest responsibility that we have, is being the stewards of our citizens' wallets. So I think that anything that we do to limit our ability to have oversight on how tax dollars are being spent is a disservice to our citizens, and it empowers the bureaucracy. Well, I'll tell you what, the citizens didn't elect the bureaucracy. They elected us to make those decisions. And quite frankly, I'm extremely disappointed at the attempt to essentially silence elected representation through the rules of procedure and to be able to carry out the business of the citizens.
All right, so one possible change that could be made would be to include the franchise agreements, possibly. Is that something that would be suggested that voting would be, I'm speaking, please, that that could be an inclusion, is allowing for votes if it's a franchise agreement, but then all other votes would happen at the 7 o'clock meeting? Or, excuse me. Or are we just saying we're gonna take this as it is right now, and if we have 4 people that are in agreement of how you've proposed it, that you'll move on with it?
It's really at council's pleasure. Would there be any objection? I've heard a lot of information. What if it was modified to say something to the effect of, with the exception of the acceptance of franchise bids, absent a 2/3 majority vote of the council, no items will be positioned for a vote during the council work session?
If I may interject, I was thinking about what Councilmember Helgeson said. I think there is merit to it. I would include, because we have an itemized list of motions that can be made in another part of the document, I would add a motion to consider. And motion to consider, the definition would be, it needs a 2/3 vote, it's used in a work session, and here's what it does. And then in this section, you're putting in notwithstanding section blah, 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 which is the motion to consider.
Okay.
So if you start getting into, you can consider this little thing or that little thing or whatever, just say, I want to consider this, I'm moving to consider it, it requires a 2/3 vote. Then what Councilmember Helgeson said, it's a simple majority to pass the thing you're now considering. So it's almost like a substitute motion, if you will. It needs to pass. Do you understand what I'm saying, Matt?
Yes, so there would be, a motion to consider would be permitted.
Yes.
And if it's adopted by 2/3 majority, then the matter could be considered for a vote as it normally would by law, which is a simple majority.
Correct.
In the council work session.
Does that work for you? Well, that was that's what you came up with, so that's why I went with
Yeah, I like that. I'm not sure about the 2/3, but that's the only, but I think because it's, people don't want to vote on something, if a majority doesn't want to vote on something, anyway, I don't know about the 2/3 is all, but I do like because there's been numerous things, for example, if we were to make a motion, like if we had have a meeting tonight and had an item on the agenda that said, hey, let's table it and move it to a work session. So that would by default already coming to a work session by another meeting to actually vote on it. And that's how most of the rezonings and the public hearings that we had previously over the last 20 years would always come to a work session. So, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, so it's 5:45, and I'm sitting here listening to all of this back and forth, and I think that there is an important discussion to have around this. So that being said, and these rules of procedure haven't changed, I am making a motion to defer consideration on everything other than the changes to 2.1, 3.4, and 5.1 in the rules of procedure that we've already discussed, to a more convenient time for council to have a more robust discussion about the changes to the rules of procedure. What that should do is that should give the clerk what she needs to be able to advertise and plan properly for July with the change to section 2.1. The section 3.4 was the one that we talked about, help me on that. That was the
That was
decorum,
preservation of order.
preservation of order. And section 5.1 would move that, I'm still speaking and speaking to the main motion, and section 5.1 would be to actually change the time to the 7 p.m. start time, which everybody seemed favorable with. So 2.1, 3.4, 5.1, leave in for the July 11th meeting, and then the motion is to defer consideration on everything else till a later date.
Unless Councilmember Helgeson would like to speak to his second.
Just, I guess, I don't know if I mean, because I don't think we're going to be adopting anything tonight, but we're not slating to adopt any of this, are we? Are we planning on adopting this anytime soon?
On July 11th.
July 11th. So if we're moving this things to July 11th, this is a work session where we're talking about things, and talking about good things and bad things. Hopefully, between now and the July 11th, we can kind of recognize some of the pitfalls and not just a knee-jerk reaction that says, oh, that sounds good, let's do it today, but let's kind of really, if we want to use a work session to be dialogue, where we've heard from people that had different agreements, whether there were 4 people or 3 people or 1 person, we should listen to those, because I think all of those items had merit. We think about those and don't just say we're going forward with those because as a knee-jerk reaction, we kind of voted in the work session to approve, because we just voted kind of now a second ago, as you called, there are 4 votes that said they're for this and 4 votes that said they're for that. That's actually voting. So with that, for the city attorney and us to kind of think, what are good rules and procedures for us to operate? So, and then come back with that on the 11th to really start hammering out some more things. So I don't think it should be just today, we're looking at it and we're done and have a quick reaction.
I would like to remind my colleagues, technically, we shouldn't be speaking to motions that don't have a second, because that would be not a proper motion before the body. So you move for something, and then if you have a second, then you begin speaking as to why you're for it. Second point to that is, I have a slightly different take, Councilmember Helgeson. By my viewpoint, this was the attorney gathering. This is, I think, where the body would be to hone in a proposal for July. So I understand your perspective. I'm going to ask my colleagues to vote no on this. Simply put, we have to adopt it in July. We have time today, and I think we should continue moving through it until the end to make sure that this is in order. If we need to continue reviewing it on the 11th at the work session, I'm fine doing it then too, but there's no sense in wasting time. I think this has been a very productive conversation about how we should operate. So for that being the case, I am asking us to vote no.
Okay, so I'm going to call a vote. If you are supporting the motion, it would be to delay the conversation. Otherwise, we'll continue the conversation tonight. Go ahead and vote. No, go ahead and vote, please.
So with that, I think.
Call the vote.
Well, I would like to talk about what he was just stating.
No, I just called the vote.
So you can't just call the vote to.
No, you spoke to your second.
I mean, we're having work session dialogue, are we not?
So, Madam Mayor, you have the ability to call for the vote. If you believe that substantial discussion has been heard on this matter, particularly from members that have already spoken, if there's no further council members that have not spoken that wish to speak but rather act, you have the right as the presiding officer to call for the vote.
Thank you. I heard the first and second, the
There's
motion
a
and the
different
second as
item.
to why you wanted to delay the vote. You explained yourself fully, so we're voting.
So the only explanation, if I may, was the fact that.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
We can't be having debate while a vote is underway.
Right.
We must vote.
I've called the vote. Thank you.
So push the button.
Please vote.
Stuff had to clear out so if you could
Oops.
revote.
I re-hit the thing, Alicia, I'm sorry.
You need to clear?
Yep.
Okay, please cast your vote.
So I lost what it is. Councilmember
Councilmember
Mischin's?
Mischin's,
Yes, okay.
motion was to adopt 213451 as the outline, or changes that you'd outlined, and then bring it back at a later date.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you.
Councilmember Wilder, if you can cast your vote. There we go. The motion fails, 3-4.
Madam Mayor,
Vice Mayor Crawley.
I'd recommend we move to the next item.
Okay.
All right, so I have sufficient guidance, I think, to prepare something on 5-1.1B, and I'll bring that back to you all. The next section proposed is a new section, Section 5-1.2, identified as roll call. In that section, there are two subsections, A and B, and they read as follows. A, roll call shall be the designated time where council members may individually and publicly speak to matters relevant to the city, its citizens, and/or the operations of the municipal corporation. B, debate shall not be permitted during roll call. However, upon the conclusion of all the council members' roll call items presented, each council member, where desired, may respond to roll call items presented, but such response shall in no event exceed a total time period of 2 minutes.
Vice Mayor Crawley.
Madam Mayor, respectfully, I would submit that A is fine. I would say B should stop at the end of the first use of roll call. Debate shall not be permitted during roll call, period. This is, in my opinion, that's a time for someone to say their piece on an item. Why is the sky blue? It should be red. I don't want to have that debate with Councilmember Taylor and have a back and forth. That's just my opportunity as a council member to say what I think on something, or hey, could we look at the pavement on Sand Hill Drive, something I did via email with the city manager. So that's my 2 cents. I think debate should not be had on roll call.
I agree with that proposed change. Any other comments or thoughts on that?
I agree.
Councilwoman Dolan?
I agree with Vice Mayor. I just don't think we should start having lengthy debates during roll call.
Dr. Wilder?
I agree with that. It just brings more order to the organization. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Hopkinson?
Have we had lengthy debates on roll call?
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of any, but.
I agree that we shouldn't have debates during roll call. Move forward.
All right. With that, then, we will move to section 5-3, public comment. Under number 7, under B, general rules regarding public comment are as follows. So under 7, it reads as follows. Currently, a representative of a group may have up to 5 minutes to make a presentation. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of his or her comment period. A group may have no more than one spokesperson. The additional proposed language is the term quote-unquote group shall mean organizations and entities, parentheses, for example, e.g. corporations, trusts, LLCs, religious entities, political parties, nonprofits, charities, etc., parentheses, with more than one person belonging thereto and serving in some official capacity therewith.
Councilman Mischin's?
So, a couple things with this. One, I'm going to ask a couple questions, I think, to the city attorney. If you were, for LLC, for example, how would you determine if an LLC has more than one person belonging to it?
Well, I suppose what they would do is the individual would represent either publicly or to the clerk when they present a desire to speak and present how they're affiliated with the LLC.
So really the only way to determine if an LLC has, and I'm just using LLC as an example, has one or more person belonging to it would be to actually get a copy of the operating agreement and see the members listed on it, correct?
Well, I think if you were looking for the legal qualification of how many individuals were associated with the LLC, but I don't think, at least from what I understand, the rules of procedure would require it to be that stringent. I think the idea that is being proposed as part of defining the group is to give the idea of the group some legitimacy, some officialness, if you will.
So now government is going to determine the legitimacy of a group or an organization? Whew. That's not something I want to do. I mean, whoever got together and figured this out may want to have done that, but I am not in the business of determining the legitimacy of an organization in our city. That's not, no. You know, Mr. Flood comes and addresses us quite a bit, and he gets 5 minutes, and he's often representing a group. And I would not want to have to ask Mr. Flood to demonstrate the legitimacy of his organization to be able to address us for 5 minutes. That is just, that's quite a tyrannical approach to public comment, and I move for striking that entire thing.
Vice Mayor Feraldi.
Okay, so, asterisk, I'm not an attorney. However, I pick up some things pretty quickly. E.g., what does that stand for?
It's for example.
Thank you. So we're not defining you must be an LLC. We're not defining a religious entity. If you want to go worship the trees and say why at city council,
That's not even what I'm talking about.
you know, you need to make sure that we're not chopping down trees. If you want to say, I represent a business interest in the city, I'm not gonna, it is not defined by here how we're gonna check their anything net degree. Come on, that is example, etc. The fact that we're going to that degree by this proposal says that we're not gonna go out and define every little organization. If you have a Facebook group of 200 parents who are conservative in nature and want to speak to why the school board isn't doing their job, that meets muster by this definition. So it's not as bad as you're making it out to be. Far from it.
Well, I mean, it's as bad as whoever's in charge is. Because what happens is when we're all gone from here and these rules of procedure are in place, then what we've done is we've given government way too much power to silence people. And you have to think about the long-term effect of the decisions we make with these rules of procedure, because if we don't change these, they're here for good. And then, you know, Mayor Reed could be walking up to the podium as no longer mayor or council member 5 years from now and say she's representing a group. And maybe it's a nonprofit that's organized in an LLC. And whoever the mayor is sitting up there, let's say it's, I don't know, anybody. And they could actually demand you deliver your operating agreement to qualify you to speak for 5 minutes in front of this city council. We have to be very careful about the decisions that we make that give this body too much power over the citizens. I don't know about you guys, but I know that when I campaigned and the people that supported me and elected me supported a limited government, not an expanded government that has the ability to be far-reaching.
Madam Mayor. I think if any individual is questioned about their business interest and why they deserve an extra 2 minutes, offers the fine articulation as to why they deserve those extra 2 minutes as you have, it will be permitted. And if it's not, that mayor will be vehemently criticized by the public. Look, this isn't that bad. And if you want to just take it that direction, you can.
That's how it starts.
Okay, that's how it starts. It also starts by passing notes that are ridiculous. So, like, that's kind of why we're all here today, is to really hone in on how we conduct business. It's not what you think it is, nor
Not
what
in the
you're
interest of showboating.
So, I've done my level best not to interrupt you. I'd ask the same respect. The term group shall mean organizations or entities. That is the only thing listed.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, ma'am.
So, this would fall on Ms. Finney, correct? Can you speak to this? Would you mind?
Sure, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I would probably include this in my language that I pass out to the public whenever they're signing up for public comment. I honestly don't know how much capacity I would have to track down the paperwork to qualify if they are a group representing 2 people.
So this is not very different than what already is told to them, given to them.
That is correct. I
and
would just add
shared.
it.
So
Yeah.
it's just elaborated now more so in our rules of procedure, but not different than what they're already told.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And currently, you don't do anything to kind of double check their word. You take them at face value
That is
when they
correct.
say that they're speaking or representing a group.
That is correct.
So this is just being added to our rules of procedure, but it's already what they're told.
That's correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Councilman Helgeson?
So with that, I think it doesn't add anything. It only can be negative. So you already have the beginning of the sentence. A representative of a group may have up to 5 minutes. I've been here for almost 20 years. There's been lots of people that have spoken as a group, and they spoke. So adding this extra definitive, where you're trying to define, I don't think it adds anything, because they're saying they're a group, and adding these items that says, well, we can approve you or not approve you, is the slippery slope that the second sentence does. It doesn't add anything to it, because you're still having a group, and you're having a group being a group by virtue of the representative speaking as though they represent a group. Great. So I think you can still you don't need to add that extra sentence, and I think you're still fine.
I'll throw Marty a bone, strike it. That's fine, I don't care. It's not a big deal. It's just, if it's that, the end of Lynchburg civilization as we know it, we can strike it.
Does anybody on this end feel like it's a deal breaker either way? Dr. Wilder?
Give everybody 3 minutes to call it a day, but I can go either way.
Okay, I think we could strike it and move on. Thank you.
All right. So
Oh, Councilman Helgeson?
So under section 5.1, number 2, it is 6 o'clock and we are done, according to our new rules of procedure. So we are done, and we still have a roll call. We still have roll call at a closed session, apparently.
Right, we're still working through this, though. Mr. Friedman, go ahead.
Just a few.
Go ahead.
The next one is section 5.4, prohibited conduct. And under A8, currently it reads, address the council on issues that do not concern the services, policies, affairs of the council or the city. And the proposed additional language includes, or that the council or the city have no authority to change.
I say pull it just because there could be, if we're talking about what the public has the ability to talk about, that could be subjective. So I would say pull that one, personally.
Councilman Missions?
I just want to say that I appreciate the vice mayor's consideration on pulling that. I would agree with him, because quite frankly, there's times when there are people sitting up here that don't even understand what our authority is. So we wouldn't want somebody policing that.
I think that the thought behind this one was that there's sometimes people have come up, I'm just going to explain to the public here, I'll speak to you guys. There's been times that people have come during public comment and addressed us with issues that are very heartfelt and very sad, and begged and pleaded us to help them with situations that we cannot help them with. And I want the public to understand that we are not heartless people that are not trying to help them. It's just that it's not in our capacity to do so. So sometimes things have happened that unfortunately we just can't get into. It's legal matters, it's police issues, whatever. And so when they've spoken to us sometimes, when we can't comment, that can sometimes may be how it appears, and of course we can't get into it with all of you, and so I think that's probably where this came and stemmed from, is we would wish that we could kind of direct the public, don't come up and talk about things that we can't help you with because we can't, but I agree, I think we can strike it. I just wanted to explain that that's probably where this came from, is that we didn't want the public to think, that we're ignoring certain things, but there's certain things that obviously we don't have the legality and ability to help with. So anybody else have any comments there?
I agree with you, but again, the public really doesn't know what our authority is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think also our clerk screens. I mean, she knows what they're going to be speaking on. And I think it's kind of a rare instance.
It is a rare instance.
And we can always follow up later, as you have at times, and gone back to that person privately and just said, look, this is something council has.
Right.
So I think it handles itself.
Okay.
Really do.
So we
All
have
right.
an agreement, we'll strike that. Councilman Mitchens?
Just out of curiosity, Did you receive any input from council members on these proposed rule changes?
I don't recall any specific input, but these are a culmination of various council members mentioning issues over time and some recent issues that have come up that spurred bringing these forward.
Because I think it would have probably behooved us to have an opportunity for all council members to consider changes to the rules of procedure and for that invite to be extended, which I never received.
Okay, moving on.
Okay.
Did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say, for Marty's consumption, I think typically when we know that this is coming up, we will go to, like I went to you, I would go to Matt or go to Alicia and say, can we look at this again? Or so I think everybody has the opportunity to do that.
Right, okay, sure.
All right.
Well, Madam Mayor, I was also going to say, these can be amended and changed at any time council wishes.
Okay,
Doesn't have to be just July.
okay, thank you. Mr.
All right.
Friedman?
Section 5.5 under public hearings. So this is where the substance of A and B differ. So I'll start with A, and it's under, as you'll see, there's been a reorganization of subsection D, E, F, and G. There is a new D, new E. D says, is proposed to say, emails, letters. Yes, sir.
I would encourage all of our members to read the language specifically, but can you summarize the two differences? Because these are quite lengthy paragraphs and it is easy to get missed in them. So what are the just main differences between A and B?
Sure. So the idea is, in lieu of reading emails as part of the public hearing process, it's to provide for an alternate process for letters, other writings not being read publicly, but being provided by council members to the clerk to be made part of the minutes if they wish to do so, in an announcement process with that. Under E, it would be the same process for voicemails to be able to be included as part of the public hearing, but they would not be presented until after all of the individuals who are here in public have spoken. There's also, I believe it's a calendar day requirement for each of these to be submitted prior to the public hearing date for them to be included. The alternate on option B is really just announcing that the emails, the letters, the writings, the voicemails don't need to be included because there is no public hearing requirement under Virginia law to do that. So as I understand it, this process had come about during the pandemic back in 2020. You know, typically, certainly council has the ability to hear from citizens with emails, letters, voicemails, et cetera, but typically the public hearings are designed to have in-person individuals come to an advertised hearing to speak.
Vice Mayor?
My recommendation, council, would be to, if someone wants to call in a voicemail, I'm still fine with that being played as you're able to, everyone's publicly able to hear Winter Benda's voice about why this is a good thing or a bad thing. Emails, I think my recommendation when I was looking at this is and would be that the mayor, whoever it is at the time, just include them into the record and not read them. If you have taken the time to put your voice to an issue that you care about, either over the phone or at the podium, it should be played or offered. But email, just given the great effort it is for our clerk to have to read them all, I think they should still be included in the record, but maybe not read. So that whichever one that would be, I believe that was your first one, Matt.
That would have been A.
So that's my recommendation, and there you go.
Okay, council missions?
Couple just practical questions, and one thing I'll say before, unless we're going to be bonusing our clerk by the word with her compensation, I'm fully in support of her not having to read all those emails. But the question that I have when I'm looking at this, it says, shall be provided to the clerk of council at least one calendar day prior to the applicable public hearing date. So we've got a public hearing tonight, right? So that would be anything provided up until midnight yesterday, is that correct? Would be included into the record for the public hearing?
Yes, so it would probably be where,
That is correct. That's usually what I do now.
Okay.
I take it up until the end of day on Monday.
And then the same with the voicemails?
That's correct.
So then the question that I have with that is, and this is just specific to public hearing. Okay, no, I think I just answered my own question. No, but I think this is great, and I actually look forward to hearing voicemails.
Okay, so that, Councilman Helgeson?
So, being part of the public record. So right now, when people come to speak, we don't put in whatever they spoke about in the minutes, other than Betty Johnson came and spoke in favor or something. So putting the actual emails in the minutes, you'd put the whole email in the minutes? I mean, so that's, so,
That's the recommendation. Right
Yeah.
now I do summarize.
yeah.
But I believe the recommendation would be to put the whole letter.
Yeah, and so with that, I think the summation, I think, you know, we kind of did this before during COVID, just kind of as a temporary, and now it's been well overutilized. So I think the more that we can take out of there, the better. I can appreciate the voicemails, but still, I think people that come down here, it's, you're not just you know, phoning in as a faceless person, you know, so I like people to still come. That's the way it's been for all these years, other than just this last couple of years with COVID. So the better we can do that, the better. Or the more we can streamline it, the better.
I'm amenable to that. That's fine.
Madam Mayor, just so I'm clear on the adjustment, under D, basically what we'd be putting on the last sentence, if a council member desires such emails, letters, and other writings to be included as part of a public hearing, then such council member shall announce the same during the public hearing and provide a summary to the clerk of council to be included in the meeting minutes.
Is that what you're suggesting? Or are you suggesting that no emails are
Well,
included at all?
yeah, you're not reading them, so you're not
Correct.
putting them in the meeting minutes.
That puts the onus on us to get it included. So if there was an email that you wanted included, then you
I
would
would have to
summarize
write
it, you
some-
know.
Okay, gotcha, yep. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that, I can guarantee that.
Okay, so that would be the proposed change he's,
With the language I just read. Okay.
correct.
All right.
Are we all comfortable with that?
It is after 6 o'clock, isn't it?
Okay.
Yep.
Everybody's comfortable with that? Okay.
And so will the voicemails also on E, that's acceptable under option A, that they still would be presented as part of the
Voicemails
public
would be
hearing?
presented.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
And eventually, I think it would be good for us to remove the voicemails as well, because if you're doing the emails that aren't gonna be read, now it'll be the voicemails. I just, it's gonna go to the, it's gonna be a lot more voicemails that we'll be listening to.
All right.
What was it Randy said? No politician has ever heard from his constituency too much?
Yeah, but if people show up, I think I like that, when they show up like we do, so.
All right, moving on.
All right, City Council, I believe that's it.
Wonderful.
One question that I have, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Richards?
Earlier, I had proposed some ideas or changes to how we would appoint school board members in open session, which we had discussed would be potentially part of the rules of procedure. So that's why I'm a little bit, disappointed in the way this whole process laid out, because I actually gave you guys something fairly deep in writing about how we would do that in open session. And currently, there's still nothing in here about how we were going to appoint school board members in open session. And I've just wanted to point that out, and I'm kind of wondering why, if you said that we were providing feedback throughout the process to you and you were capturing that feedback, then why was that also not included as a option to amend these rules of procedure?
That was my oversight in following up with you, Councilmember Mischins.
Okay.
What I would submit, and the reason I did not present it as part of the rules of procedure, is what I anticipate will happen is after July 11th, we would bring forward some additional proposed changes generally for boards and commissions as a whole. That was the feedback I had received from other council members as well as the clerk of council in trying to address what you had mentioned, but also various other council members that had mentioned it.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, that was not quite all of Mr. Friedman's oversight. It was mine as well, based on conversations that we had about bringing something back more substantial for all boards and commissions.
Okay. All right, moving on to roll call. Dr. Wilder.
Congratulations, Lynchburg Youth Service Sports Initiative had a great event at Lynchburg, University of Lynchburg on Saturday. Had about 300 youth playing different sports from lacrosse to basketball to football to various things. Thank you for the community partners all coming together to make that happen for our church and our community. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilman Dolan?
I just want to congratulate our 7 new LPD officers that graduated last Friday. That was quite an event. It always reminds us how we really need to be grateful for the sacrifices that they make for our safety. And it was great to see 2 women among the officers. And also came from Lynchburg, North Carolina, South Africa, Puerto Rico. So we have a lot of diversity, and I was very happy to see that.
Yes, wonderful, thank you. Councilman Helgeson?
So with the capital improvement plan that we approved last month on a 4-3, $520 million, hopefully before we move forward on some of these projects, we can actually have, since we didn't have lots of debate on those, like for example, the $6 million of downtown beautification and streetscape. So I recognize that we approved it as a package, but hopefully before staff signs contracts, they'll recognize that in a big number, lots of things are somewhat lost. You know, as I drive around downtown and up 5th Street and all these places where these bricks were hand laid and tile and all the beautification that is done previously, I see that beautification that is done in front of empty storefronts. The whole purpose was economic development. So when I see these wonderful things that are a good intention, and I look at this new capital improvement plan that looks at another $6 million in downtown beautification of the streetscape, hopefully before staff actually signs contracts on some of these other items that we mentioned individually as well, but we had to approve it as a package for time, that before we do that, before staff actually signs contracts, we'll have a little bit more ability for council to weigh in on some of those, whether it be a roundabout or whether it be spending another $945,000 consulting somebody that's going to come up with the conclusion of a roundabout on Rivermont, that will say, let's look at these individually. I think those, before we do the $80,000 worth of fire cabinets, that will actually kind of say, council is divided on this. And hopefully staff will recognize that some of these individual projects are going to require a little bit more than just a blanket approval of a $520 million capital improvement plan.
Okay, Councilman Mischins?
So, a couple things. One is kind of speaking to what Councilmember Helgeson said as well about moving forward on some of these projects in the CIP. I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Manager, I think there was $100,000 that was slated for Heritage Park improvements. I think that was the amount. Heritage Park improvements.
You probably remember the number better than I, but.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I would hope that before anything is done there, I'd like to sit down and have a robust discussion about what is exactly going to happen at Heritage Park. And, you know, I think that that's important, and what we may deliberate and desire up here may be different than what the Parks and Rec Master Plan says. So I just think that would be important to look at that. Also, I wanted to thank the city manager and deputy city manager, Mr. Friedman. Holly was in here earlier, but she's gone, and Michelle Jackson, our director of human resources. Am I missing anybody from yesterday? On a great, robust conversation we had yesterday afternoon about the proposed resolution for this evening. I was very thankful for the time that everybody was able to put together yesterday to talk about that, and I'm excited about taking that to action tonight.
Councilman Taylor?
No, it's good.
No? Vice Mayor Feraldi?
Nope.
Okay. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to hold my mayor's remarks until our next meeting. And we will now move on to the consideration of a closed meeting to discuss the investment of public funds to assist in securing the expansion of a prospective or existing business where bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the city would be adversely affected pursuant to sections 2.2-3711A5 and 2.2-3711A6 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. May I have a motion to go into closed meeting? All right.
Say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay. We're good? We're now in closed session.